The mountains of northern Italy are breathtaking in summer. Towering pines crowd the slopes, the wind carries the smell of moss and cold stone, and a hidden lake lies cradled like a piece of glass in the forest's heart. That's where we pitched our tent, an hour's drive from the nearest town, then a long hike on a narrow path that disappeared into the trees. It was just me and my best friend, 15 years old, feeling invincible in the way only teenagers do. By dusk the day trippers had all left, their voices fading like the echo of birds. The trail became empty. The parking lot was a void. Even the lake, which had been sparkling under the sun, turned black as a mirror when the shadows swallowed it. We were alone now, alone with the woods, the water, and the dark. We sat by the fire we had made, small and flickering. My friend drained my phone battery texting a girl he was trying to impress, cursing the weak signal. The screen finally went black. No service, no flashlight, no contact with the world beyond. It was just us. At around 9 we crawled into the tent. The air was already colder than it should have been. I'd smoked a little weed earlier, he hadn't touched it, he never did. I was the one interested in strange stories, unexplained things, ghost tales told under blankets. He was the skeptic. Sleep crept up on me quickly, but it was the wrong kind of sleep. The moment my eyes shut, people began to appear, first one then another, stepping into the tent as if it had no walls. They didn't come through the door, they simply passed through the fabric, their bodies rippling through like smoke. Friends from school, neighbors, strangers. They sat with us, spoke softly, told small fragments of stories, and then faded away. More came and more, a couple holding hands, a girl walking a dog on a leash. Faces I knew, faces I didn't. They drifted in and out for what felt like hours. It was so vivid I could smell them: shampoo, cigarette smoke, perfume. The tent was crowded and empty at once. I couldn't move. I wasn't afraid at first, it was like being caught between dreaming and waking. But gradually the air grew heavier, the voices quieter. The dog stared at me with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. And then it stopped. I woke up gasping. My friend was asleep, his breathing slow and steady. The tent was empty, silent, zipped shut. For a long moment I thought it had all been a dream. The stars outside were unbelievably bright, sprayed across the sky like frost. I unzipped the tent and stepped out to pee, shivering in the cold. The lake was still. The trees didn't move. Then, from somewhere deep in the forest, came a sound, a wolf's howl. Long, low, rising. It seemed to vibrate through the earth. My skin prickled. I had never heard a wolf in real life. At that moment I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. I dove back into the tent and forced myself to sleep. Morning came, pale and quiet. Sunlight made everything look ordinary again, our campfire dead, the lake blue and harmless. We started to pack up, still shaken but pretending we weren't. Before I could speak, my friend turned to me and said, "I had the weirdest dream last night." I laughed. "Me too." He began to describe it. One by one, he told me exactly what I had seen, the people drifting through the walls, the couple, the girl with the dog. Even the conversations matched. I interrupted him, finishing details he hadn't yet said. He froze, staring at me. We both knew it hadn't been a normal dream. We were 15, but in that moment our stomachs turned like stone. We packed quickly and left, hiking back through the forest in silence. Years later, when wolves had returned to that region and campers stopped coming, we spoke of it again. My friend said he would never forget that night. Neither would I. Sometimes I wonder if something at that lake wanted us to see. Sometimes I think about the girl with the dog. I never remember her face, but I always remember the dog's eyes, and I've never gone camping there again. Northern Maine isn't just remote, it's another world. Up in Aroostook County, past the last gas stations and cell towers, the pine forests stretch for miles in every direction, broken only by streams feeding the St. John River. It's the kind of wilderness where you can paddle for days and not see a soul, where the only sound at night is the wind and the cries of loons. In the summer of 1998, my family headed out for what was supposed to be our fourth canoe camping trip in this pristine stretch of America. We always started the same way, a drop-off at a wooden bridge over a small feeder stream, then 2 or 3 days drifting downstream, fishing for brook trout, and camping on the banks until we reached the St. John. It was a ritual we loved. This time, we'd even planned to stay on a little island halfway down the route, a narrow strip of land splitting the stream in two, the water low enough to wade but too rocky to paddle. By dusk on our second day we were settled in. Our tents were up, the canoes pulled above the high water mark. My parents had a fire going, and the smell of frying trout drifted through the cool air. My sister and I were skimming stones across the stream, the sky bleeding from gold into dark indigo. It was the kind of evening where everything feels timeless. Then Mom called our names. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, with an edge of panic. We turned, and froze. Dad wasn't alone anymore. Just a few yards from our fire stood a man we'd never seen before. He was short, maybe 5'3", with a wild, bushy beard. His clothes looked rough and handmade, like burlap sacks stitched into a tunic and trousers. Over his shoulder was a crude pack lashed together with sticks and rope, animal furs rolled on top. He leaned on an old musket as if it were a walking stick. He looked as shocked to see us as we were to see him. He spoke first, in what sounded like French, but Old French, words tumbling out that even my mother, who had learned the language, could barely make sense of. One phrase repeated over and over, something like, tattoo sack, pointing back toward the trees. Then he pointed at us, at our tents, at my father's jacket, his eyes flicking over our gear with curiosity. My mother tried to ask if he was from Quebec or Canada. He looked only more confused. The more she spoke, the more animated he became, gesturing at our canoes, at our campfire, still muttering in that old dialect. My father stiffened, reading the situation. He made a stop motion with his hand, trying to put space between us. My mother joined him, waving the man off in French, partez, allez. Finally, the stranger seemed to understand. Without another word, he turned and stepped into the knee-deep water, crossing to the opposite bank. We all watched him go. And then, as soon as he stepped into the trees, he was gone. Not just hidden by brush. Gone. The bank was open and flat, there was nowhere for him to vanish to that quickly. The fire hissed. The woods went silent. My sister whispered, he didn't have shoes, just strips of leather on his feet. Mom wanted to pack up and leave immediately. Dad convinced her to wait until dawn, better than portaging and paddling in the dark, but even he sat up all night by the fire with his pistol across his knees, keeping watch while we huddled in the tent. We made it to the St. John the next day without incident. We never saw the man again. We never even heard so much as a splash behind us. We've tried to explain it ever since. Was he a hermit? A lost trapper? Someone living off the grid, speaking a version of French no one's used in a century? Or was it something older, something tied to that land and river? That was our last family canoe trip. Mom refused to go back after that. And sometimes, late at night, I still see him in my mind, the bearded man in burlap, staring at our camp, musket in hand, eyes reflecting the firelight, as if we were the ghosts and he was the one who belonged there. North Carolina has its share of wilderness legends. Growing up here, you learn quick about the Appalachian Mountains, all the whispers about things in the woods you don't want to meet after dark. Wampus cats, skinwalkers, ghosts that follow you home, you name it. But the Uhori Mountains? They weren't supposed to be like that. They're smaller, older, gentler hills compared to the Blue Ridge and the Smokies. A quiet national forest where you hike, fish, or camp without worrying about ghost stories. At least, that's what my boyfriend and I thought. We were bored one weekend and decided to just go camping. Nothing fancy, just a quick getaway into the woods with a tent, a fire, and some good food. The first night felt normal enough. Cold, yes, bone-chilling, even. The fire wouldn't stay lit no matter how much we fed it, and by 5 in the morning we gave up and drove home just to warm up. We almost didn't go back. Something about the way the cold clung to our skin felt wrong, heavier than just bad weather. But the next evening we tried again. We told ourselves the Uhoris were safe. People camped here all the time. That night, as the fire sputtered, my boyfriend stiffened. He said he'd heard whistling. Just a short tune, somewhere in the trees. I brushed it off, maybe other campers nearby. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on the shadows a little longer than usual. By the third night, we'd settled into the rhythm of it. We even caught a few crawfish and made a little seafood boil. The other campers at the site next to ours packed up and left, waving as they drove off. For the first time all weekend, it felt peaceful. Just us, the fire, and a sky full of stars. And then, it started to rain. We both jumped up, trying to protect the food, pulling jackets over ourselves. But something was wrong. There weren't any clouds. Not a single one. The sky was clear, so clear you could see the Milky Way smeared across it like paint. I pulled out my phone, checked the radar. Nothing. Not even a hint of a storm within 300 miles. But we could feel the droplets hitting our skin, pattering on the ground, sizzling in the fire. And then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. The forest went silent. Not the usual hush of evening, dead silent. No wind, no insects, no owls, no rustle of leaves. Just, nothing. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My boyfriend turned to me, eyes wide, and before either of us spoke, it came again. A whistle. Faint, deliberate, from somewhere deeper in the trees. We froze. Our neighbors were gone. There was no one else within shouting distance. And yet, the sound drifted closer, as if whoever was making it wanted us to hear. That was enough. We grabbed the pot, tossed it in the car, and drove. My hands shook on the steering wheel, every nerve screaming at me to get out. The strangest part? As we passed other campgrounds, we saw tents, trucks, RVs, people were there. But not a single fire was burning. Not one. It was only 9:30 at night, prime time for campfires, yet every site sat dark and cold, as if whoever was there had been snuffed out. We pushed on, past a cluster of houses. Every window was black. Past the ranger station. Not a single light. It was like we were driving through a dead zone, an entire stretch of forest asleep, or worse. The second we hit the edge of the forest, everything snapped back. Porch lights glowed from the houses. A car passed us on the road. Civilization hummed like nothing had happened. We didn't say a word, just kept driving until we hit town. For the first time in my life, the sound of traffic was a comfort. The next day we forced ourselves to return, just to grab our gear. The forest felt normal again, full of birdsong and sun. Almost like it had been mocking us. But when we tried to leave, the car wouldn't start. Once. Twice. 3 times, the engine coughed before finally turning over. It felt like whatever was there in the Uhoris wanted one last laugh. We haven't gone back since. And when I think of those mountains now, I don't picture fishing or stargazing or peaceful campsites. I think of that impossible rain under a cloudless sky. I think of the whistling. And I wonder how many other campers heard it too, but didn't make it back to tell the story. There's a little island out in the middle of a lake way out in the country where me and my buddy used to camp. It's not a place you stumble upon by accident. The only way to get there is to climb across the remains of an old bridge for cars, half collapsed into the water, rusted and jagged like broken teeth. The bridge had been closed for decades. You had to know it was there. We'd camped there a few times before. It was the kind of place you went to get away from everything. No cell signal. No noise except the water lapping against the shore. Just an old stone fire ring, a flat patch of dirt for a tent, and trees whispering in the breeze. That night started like all the others. We set up the tent before sunset, got a fire going, cooked our dinner. By the time the sky turned black, the stars were out by the thousands. No light pollution out there. It's so dark you can almost hear the stars. Around 11 or 12, we were sitting around the fire, eating, talking about nothing. And then it happened. 20 feet away, just at the edge of the trees, two white lights appeared. Side by side. Floating. We froze. Both of us stopped talking mid-sentence. At first we thought, flashlights? Maybe somebody else had made it across the bridge. But these weren't flashlights. They weren't beams. They were orbs. Soft, white, glowing, like someone holding two huge fireflies cupped in their hands. We stood up. My buddy called out, "Who's there?" His voice cracked a little. I added, "Hey. Show yourself." Nothing. No answer. No sound but the fire popping. The orbs started to move. They drifted along the edge of our campsite, smooth and steady. Not bobbing like someone walking, not jittering like someone holding lights. Just, gliding. My heart was pounding. My buddy whispered, "That's not a person." We kept shouting anyway, but the orbs didn't slow down, didn't react. They slid around the perimeter of our camp and then began moving toward the woods. Still side by side. Still perfectly still. And then they did something that made my stomach drop. They crossed the water. Without stopping, without dipping or rising, they glided straight through the water like it wasn't even there. No ripples. No sound. They climbed, floated, really, up a massive hill on the other side, no pause, no change of speed, until they reached the tree line and vanished. We stood there in total silence, barely breathing. The fire crackled behind us, too bright and too warm for how cold the air had suddenly felt. Then my buddy said what we were both thinking, "We need to go." We packed everything in record time. Tent still damp from dew, food half-eaten, gear stuffed wherever it would fit. We climbed back across that half-submerged bridge by flashlight, hands trembling, water splashing at our boots. Every second I expected to look back and see the orbs again, hovering silently at the edge of the island. We never did. But we didn't stop driving until we were miles from the lake. Even now, years later, we talk about that night sometimes. We both saw the same thing. We both remember the way those lights moved. And we both remember the feeling, not like we were being watched, but like we were being measured. We haven't been back since. But sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes, I can still see those two white orbs gliding toward the trees. And I wonder if they ever crossed the bridge behind us.